On 1+1, the battle to stay alive for a horror writer whose days are numbered. Thornbird's author Colleen McCulloch and why government advisor Professor Ross Garnaut is a man in demand. Hello, I'm Jane Hudson. Welcome to the program. British climate change sceptic Lord Christopher Monckton has shone a light on our first guest, describing Professor Ross Garnaut as a Nazi, but that speaks more about Lord Monckton. Ross Garnaut is a man who's worn many hats as an academic, former ambassador, corporate chairman, even a farmer. But it's his latest role that's made him one of the most powerful people in the country right now. Professor Ross Garnaut is the face of the often explosive climate change debate as the government's key advisor on global warming. He's speaking with Sarah Clark.
Professor Ross Garnaut, thanks very much for joining 1+1.
Good to be here, Sarah.
Now, you've had a very busy schedule for the last few years. In particular, you produced around 10 or so reports on climate change. Has this been your biggest challenge so far?
Yeah, busy in two parts. I gave one report to the then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd in September 2008, had a breather and then was brought back into it late last year. Yes, it's probably the hardest one I've tackled, and maybe the most important in terms of the consequences for Australia getting it right.
After the reports in 2008, when you were commissioned by the former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, the government then at that stage distanced itself from you and those reports. How did that feel?
Oh, I've been around the place a long time, so I didn't feel anything personally. In fact, right through that period after my report came out, I was able to discuss the issues at length with the Prime Minister. I thought the government made mistakes, especially in shelving the scheme when it did, and naturally I was disappointed at the mistakes, but I've been around public policy too long to take it personally.
But do you find this time round, is there more support, more public support, or how have you found the support base differ between the two, rather than, I suppose, what you've discovered or been reporting on?
Well, one very big difference is last time what I was working on had bipartisan interest. The opposition at the time was strongly supportive of the work, encouraged it, and accepted the main recommendations. The opposition's target's the same as the government's target, and that came out of the 2008 review. The opposition changed its mind. Some people say that I've been partisan because I didn't change my mind when the opposition did, but I think that if you're required to give an independent assessment, and that's what my terms of reference required me to do, and if you're honest by the analysis, you've got to come to the conclusions that the analysis leads you to, and you can't change your mind for a political reason. So, as it happens this time, some people on the opposition side are criticising my work. It's because they've changed, not because I have. And let me add that not all opposition front benches are of that mind. I've had some very nice encouragement from leading members of the opposition.
And has that been one of the bigger hurdles, that you found that the not having the bipartisan support, the opposition has triggered a lot of the division within the public community, or is it leading the charge?
Yes, I think so. That sort of legitimised antipathetic views, and the nature of the high-level political debate has legitimised extreme views. So this is a deeply polarised discussion, and in some ways a departure from the civility that we used to associate with Australian political culture.
And are you disappointed by that? I mean, the targets and the attacks have been pretty heavy going, and we talked to some scientists this week about the death threats that they've been getting. Are you disappointed by that?
Oh, I am concerned for Australia because I think we are a better political culture, a better society, if we are able to debate hard issues, complicated issues in a rational way.
And you've been the face of this climate change debate pretty much, and right now you're probably one of the most powerful people in the country, particularly when it comes to deciding on the carbon pricing and the recommendations you've made. Have you been a target, and how have you found that personally?
Well, I'm not one of the most powerful people in the country. I don't make any decisions. Whether or not I have any influence at all depends on the view that's taken of my advice by other people in the government, other people in the Parliament who are not part of the government. They'll make all the decisions. They're the powerful ones. I have to try to be persuasive. I think I've worked things out pretty well, so I try to be as persuasive as I can, but it's all their decisions. Yes, this debate has made all serious participants who are on the side of rational discourse targets not helpful to talk any more about that, but it's been a disruptive process.
Has this job been bigger than you expected it would be then?
Well, I knew I was taking on a big one when I took on the original report. It's bigger in the sense that I thought I'd done it. I gave the report to Kevin Rudd in September 2008 with the words, "I have completed my presumptuous task." Well, it wasn't completed. I had to do this big update. So what was a surprise is that I had to go around the racecourse again.
You mentioned in your National Press Club address in May that the climate change debate has become a fight between old political culture of special interests and the national interest. Who's going to win down the track, do you think?
Well, I think national interest's got a chance, but it's a struggle. I think that the current disposition of the Parliament creates an opportunity for the national interest to win through. I expect it to, but we'll see.
How do you define success in this debate?
Well, for the first review, my team, my excellent and hard-working team, would often ask me, how will we define success? What's our key performance indicator? And often they'd say, is it how much of our recommendation that the government finally accepts or becomes law or policy? And I say, no, our essential job is to make sure that the people who make the decisions and the Australian community understand the implications of the decisions that are taken. Well, I think we met that key performance indicator. I think in a small way, one of the reasons the issue didn't go away when the government walked away from it was that the community did understand a little bit better the implications of the decision that was being taken. This time I've set the bar a bit higher. This time I would like to contribute to a result. So you can judge me poorly if the work this time doesn't lead to the legislation of a carbon price.
How do you think you'll be judged, though, in a generation's time?
I think I'll be judged fairly badly for coming so late to the subject. The first time in work on public policy that I made reference to the dangers of the issue was in a report I did for the Business Council back in 1997. Well, lots of informed Australians were on top of the issue before then, and that was pretty late. And I didn't see it as a central issue for quite a few years after that. So when my grandkids say, Grandad, you dropped the ball, I'll have to say, yeah, I was late, but once the penny dropped, I tried to catch up.
Professor Ross Garnaut, thanks very much for joining 1+1.
Very nice to talk to you.
In poor health and with failing eyesight, internationally acclaimed writer Colleen McCulloch rarely leaves her home on Norfolk Island. But an enterprising composer enticed her to the mainland recently to see the premiere of a new musical based on her novel Morgan's Run. Gavin Lockley has now joined a long queue of admirers of the author of Thornbirds and a score of other novels, including a series on ancient Rome. He was astonished when the 74-year-old writer publisher not only agreed to let him adapt her book, but dropped everything to help him with the project. Colleen McCulloch made the journey for opening night, and she's speaking with Anne-Maria Nicholson.
Colleen McCulloch, thanks for talking to 1+1.
My pleasure.
Now, you've come back to Australia to see one of your novels, Morgan's Run, transformed into a musical on the stage. And you've been working to get it to that point. What's that experience like as a writer, seeing one of your works transformed?
Oh, it's great fun. If you write novels, you know, you're the entire orchestra and chorus. The whole band, everything in you. But when you collaborate on a musical or an opera, you're only half of the creative team, and the other half has equal shares with you and has to be deferred to as much as you have to be deferred to. It's called a collaboration, and it's a marrying of words and music. It's wonderful fun to do.
And you don't mind that sharing what was once the work that you created with others to have their say about?
I think it's fascinating that anybody else would even be interested. It doesn't worry me in the least, because novelling is a very lonely art. And so when you have the opportunity to do teamwork with somebody who is genuinely a genius at what they do.
And Morgan's Run came out, I think, around about 2000, and part of that is set on Norfolk Island, where you've lived for a long time. Was it living there? Is that what inspired that story? And tell me a little bit about the character.
No, Morgan's Run was inspired by the fact that he's the 4 times great-grandfather of my husband. And I thought, what a wonderful idea to write a definitive novel about the First Fleet from the convicts' point of view. I get so fed up with the snobbery of the English officers and whatever. They didn't make this country. The convicts were the ones who made the country. And Morgan was a convict. And he has an authentic history that was documented right throughout. His crime, extraordinarily enough, was the most interesting of any crime on the First Fleet. He was framed. A lot of them were framed.
What was his crime?
He was extortion and the stealing of a stainless steel watch. But it was all a setup. It was incredibly complicated, as only an 18th century mind could be tortuous. And a lot of the convicts were framed. Anyway, I just thought that this man, and he lived to be 97 years old.
Extraordinary age for that era.
Yes, considering he was 35 when he was convicted, supposed to be sent to Africa, wound up on the First Fleet to Botany Bay, was sent very